Well, on the 28th of June 2016, the police did go to an awful lot of trouble and expense to do a counter-terrorism exercise in some disused warehouses adjacent to the Royal Mint, next to Colwinston Common and the hospital. And I want to play it for you. It's only a short video. Richard D. Hall filmed it. And where you can see simulated munitions going off. And it's important because I want you to take note at the amount of smoke there are from these simulated munitions, and of course the really loud explosions.
It's 7:45 in the morning. I'm in Pentyrch and I've just come to get a cup of tea somewhere. It's the 28th of June today, and I've just seen this notice which says South Wales Police and its partners are holding a live training exercise in the Landowner area. The loud noise, explosions and gunfire you can hear relate to this emergency service exercise, which will commence at 10 o'clock, concluding at 6 o'clock. This will not affect your service requirements of any of the participating agencies. It's 5 to 10 and nothing's kicked off yet. It said on the notice that it starts at 10 and finishes at 6. So the terrorists obviously work office hours these days. It's 10:30 now. See the Royal Mint there. Just heard gunfire there. There's no helicopters or aerial activity. It's obviously something on the ground. Yeah, I can see smoke there, look.
Oh, look.
Yeah, that's near where those ambulances went before. When I went along the main road, they went into a factory on the other side of the road at the Royal Mint. So I reckon I can probably get closer if I just if I can cycle a bit further along here. Bloody hell.
There's another one. As you can see, there is not enough smoke from these simulated munitions to have created what the staff said at the Royal Glamorgan Hospital resembled a very foggy night. And so thick was the smoke that it was coming through the vents and through the windows and filling the corridors of the hospital with smoke. I've seen more smoke from a firework. But the biggest thing is, they let off at least 2 simulated munitions there. But I didn't hear them. Did you? I'm pretty sure they didn't register on the Richter scale 40 miles away. But they also sent a letter to everybody, all the residents in Colwinston and the surrounding areas, to warn of this exercise in advance, including erecting posters. So we went back to the Royal Glamorgan Hospital because I still need proof that they had prior notification of the exercise that took place on the 25th and 26th of February. And yet again, they give us the same blue font. And they would not divulge, we asked, for the email. They could have redacted the names, but we wanted to see the email. And we pressed them for it. And we said, you claim to have an email for which you have an excerpt as part of a previous Freedom of Information reply. I request to have a copy of that email with any other information documented or recorded of any on your system as part of the response I had originally requested. Further to this, an internal review of your questions and responses has been conducted, and the Health Board maintains its position with the exemption. They go on to say, we would also like to reiterate there are no requirements to keep details of notifications of exercises. So they don't even have the email they allege to have taken excerpts from, at least on 3 different occasions. Well, we've been in contact with South Wales Police because hundreds of people called the police that night, and we wanted transcripts of their phone calls. And there's a very interesting one here from the ambulance service and the staff from the Royal Glamorgan Hospital. They can hear helicopter noise above and also a loud bang, and were wondering if anything was going on. And they've been advised that there was an ongoing military exercise. So the staff weren't told. The other people that said that they received prior notification, interestingly, was the Royal Mint, because there had been some indication that perhaps the Royal Mint had something to do with this massive exercise, even though it was never an exercise. And they wrote back to us and said, following up on your Freedom of Information request on the 24th of February 2018, actually, whilst we received prior notification of the training exercise you refer to from the Welsh Extremism Counter-terrorism Unit, who the bloody hell are they? The Royal Mint had no involvement in respect to this exercise whatsoever, and our premises were not used in any way. The exercise had no impact on our security systems or alarms, and any road closures had no effect on us either. So we pressed them further to show us proof that they had prior notification. And they said, we have no paperwork or documented evidence of notification of this event. We were informed verbally, and given the passing of time and lack of written notification, were unable to be more specific as to the date and time of the notification. This is the Royal Mint, one of the most protected buildings anywhere in the world. There are military-grade explosives going off strong enough to shake buildings and set car alarms off in neighbouring villages. And they didn't check if they ever had prior notification. So now we knew who to contact, South Wales Police. And we asked these questions multiple times. And it says, I wish to request information pertaining to training exercises. Could you please confirm whether you were or weren't conducting counter-terrorism exercises in Pentyrch or the local vicinity of South Wales between the 25th and 26th of February 2016? If the answer is yes, what time or times did these exercises take place? Did these exercises take place and roughly for how long? And were the local population informed that counter-terrorism exercises were taking place during the requested time above? And they wrote back to us. And again, I think this has slipped off the page, so I'm going to get it out of my file. Sorry, I had to put this together very quickly today. South Wales Police, where are you? Oh, here we are. Okay. And their response was, South Wales Police can neither confirm or deny that it holds any information with regard to your request, as a duty section 11A of the Freedom of Information Act 2000 does not apply by virtue of the following exemptions. Section 24.2, National Security, and Section 31.3, Law Enforcement. Overall harm, Section 24 and Section 31 are both qualified exemptions, and as such, there is a requirement to evidence any harm in confirmation or denial, and that any information is held as well as consider the public interest. And they go on this blurb. So I wrote back to them. Got to move it on. I'm dealing with three things here, so apologies. And this was my response. Dear South Wales Police, thank you for your response to my Freedom of Information request, requesting whether you conducted a counter-terrorism exercise on the 25th and 26th of February 2016 in the Pentyrch area of South Wales. You quoted two exemptions, national security and law enforcement. Having given your exemptions some consideration and wholeheartedly agreeing that national security should be a priority, I do not agree that your exemptions are valid in this case. You state, to disclose whether or not the information is held would undermine the force's capabilities, which consequently would be detrimental to their ability to deal with the ongoing terrorist threat we face. It would be counterproductive to place information in the public domain about any counter-terrorism exercises which would inform the general public, especially those with malintent, that counter-terrorism tactics, techniques and procedures would have been on display or will be in the future. Counter-terrorism operations, by their very nature, are fundamental to the safety and protection of the country at large, and public at large, Therefore, to confirm or deny this information is held negatively impacted tactics, techniques and procedures, which is not in the public interest. Let me just go back to the slides a second, because my letter continues. On the 28th of June 2016, in the Colwinston area of South Wales, you did indeed conduct a police counter-terrorism exercise in some disused warehouses adjacent to the Royal Mint and Colwinston Common. A letter was issued and sent to all residents of Colwinston and the surrounding areas to warn of this exercise in advance. Posters were also erected giving notice of the aforementioned exercise. Did the rules for national security or your ability to police not apply then? Or indeed the public interest? This is just one example of police counter-terrorism exercises being announced in advance, where they were advertised by the mainstream media, on television and on local radio stations. Surely notifying people in advance, sometimes months in advance, would be a risk to national security? I'm asking you about an alleged exercise that took place 7 years ago and would in no way impact national security or your techniques and procedures. Police counter-terrorism exercises have always been announced in advance in every major city in England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. They've also been announced on a Europe-wide counter-terrorism exercise in advance. This subject has never been a secret, until now, for these 2 dates specifically. You mentioned several times your tactics, techniques and procedures. I'm not asking you for any of those, but here is a link to a video on YouTube where a senior police officer is giving a running commentary of the police in action during one of your counter-terrorism exercises. And UK police launched a major counter-terror drill in London, where the Queen was at the time, and the link itself is of the Assistant Commissioner herself. This is just one example, but there are many more which I can provide on request. I feel you are deliberately trying to avoid my question, which is reasonable, and if national security or ability to police did not apply in the country's capital, and in every major city in the United Kingdom across the whole of Europe and the rest of the world, why then will you not answer any of my questions regarding the 25th and 26th of February 2016 in the Pentyrch area of South Wales? But it goes on. If you do not answer my request, I will ask for an internal review, providing more evidence if necessary. If that fails, I will lodge a complaint with the Police Complaints Committee and my MP. In the famous words of the late great President J.F. Kennedy, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. The law requires that you answer me, and the exemptions you have given have never applied. Police counter-terrorism exercises have always been announced in advance, on the mainstream news, in the media, on the internet and on the radio. I would appreciate a very quick and timely reply and not leave me waiting the lawful time allowed. This request is something that can be dealt with in quick time. And quick time, they did deal with it. This is the internal review from South Wales Police, and we asked the same question. I wish to request information pertaining to training exercises. Could you please confirm whether you were or weren't conducting counter-terrorism exercises in Landowner or the local vicinity of South Wales between the 25th and 26th of February 2016? And would you believe they upheld their original position? An internal review has now been conducted in a fair and impartial manner, and our original position is upheld. Nothing's fair and impartial from a self-governing police force. If you remain dissatisfied with our response, you have the right to direct your complaint to the Information Commissioner's office using the attached contact details. Well, unfortunately, the junior office clerk forgot to action those, so Gary Jones and I went directly to the Information Commissioner's office. And they don't take on everyone's case. They can't. There's simply just too many. You must provide evidence. Okay, evidence. And this is against South Wales Police. And we had to give them our evidence. Thank you for your complaint and supporting information about the above public authority handling of your recent request for information. Your complaint is now important to us and is now eligible for investigation. This is investigating South Wales Police for contempt. That's 2 years in prison or a £5,000 fine for every single one of their officers that refused to answer me. And they did have to answer me. And Jeremy Vaughan, Chief of Police from South Wales Police, I'm going to have to move this because this is in 3 parts so you can see it. And the case number is there, IC 217452-W4L9. That inquiries have been made to the counter-terrorism units, and they have confirmed that they hold no information in relation to this question. Would you believe there were no counter-terrorism exercises on the 25th and 26th of February 2016, so why the hell did the hospital say there was one? And why couldn't the hospital provide the email where they allege they had prior notification? Well, I hadn't finished with South Wales Police just yet. They've got a long way to go. We asked them about road closures. A number of roads were closed off during the exercise around the Royal Glamorgan Hospital in Smilod Woods. Who exactly gave this order? Why was it necessary to close the roads? And whose job was it to close the roads during the time stated? And they refused to answer us request. I think I've missed that slide out. So we asked for an internal review, and they decided that it wasn't vexatious, and they did have to answer it, and this is hilarious. And right at the bottom, they've come up with their answer, which is, we have been unable to locate any recorded information in relation to any road closures on the date specified. The officers involved have since left the organisation, and other inquiries have been unsuccessful. How do they know who's involved if nothing happened? Come on. Anyway, this is the kind of intelligence we're dealing with here. We've got nothing to worry about, guys. But going back to this document, Training Over Private Land, and this is where there is a little bit of reading to do. The use of pyrotechnics, which is important because on 2 occasions now the Ministry of Defence have admitted that they use pyrotechnics and blank firing ammunition. So let me find this because I've got them all in order, so I will have to read them. Otherwise there's just too much to get through. Okay. Apologies, guys. I've got so many documents. Put it right way. No, okay, I'll read it off the screen, or at least I'll try to. Special attention is to be paid to any restrictions imposed by the landowner on the use of blanks, ammunition, pyrotechnics, or other training materials. When permission has been given to use live ammunition or pyrotechnics, they must warn the local police, and on no account should red flares be used for any training purpose. And that's important because that's what a lot of the debunkers have tried to say. That's what I saw, flares. But this lady, a Miss Martin, wrote to Joint Forces Command independently to ask, I would like to request information regarding Exercise Chameleon, allegedly, that took place in Pentyrch and Colwinston area of South Wales on the 25th and 26th of February 2016. Can you tell me if any aircraft flares were set off during the exercise? If so, what time were they set off? And if so, what location were they set off? And they said that they were treating it under the freedom of information, and we just bring their answer up a second because it slipped off the screen. And they have said a search for the information has now been completed within the Ministry of Defence, and I can confirm that no information in the scope of your request is held. So no flares were let off. Going back to training over private land, these are some of the things that they have to do. There must be a detailed recce and written consent. Once the authority has been given, it is the unit's responsibility to carry out a detailed recce and an environmental survey and everything else, risk assessments, decide upon the suitability of the area, obtain the owner's written consent. The brigade can authorise training as soon as the owner's written consent is received. Okay. So we asked National Resources for Wales. Again, I'm going to have to move this up because it slipped off the screen, so you can read it. I'm writing in respect to follow up a request for information dated 23rd of February 2018 under the provisions of the Environmental Information Regulations 2004. You requested National Resources for Wales to provide you with why was Smilog Woods closed to the public during this time, the 25th and 26th of February 2016? What exactly is the reason for the military being in Smilog Woods during this time? Whose authority was it to close the woods to the public during this time? And why were the roads closed down in the areas of Pentyrch and around Smilog Woods during this time? And they wrote back to us and said, there was no permission granted to the military to close the woodland and the public paths and to let off explosives in the woodlands mentioned during these dates, or in fact any dates. So we have no records. This type of activity would have required permission. So if it had occurred, we would have had a record. Therefore, Regulation 12.4a, Environmental Information Regulations 2004 applies. Information not held. So they did not get permission from the landowner, without which no exercise could ever take place. But there are other things that they have to do for the rules and regulations for training over private land, and they are pertinent, so I'll get through them quickly. Training over private land is military training carried out on land by virtue of written permission from the private landowner, which they didn't have. It includes common land and land subject to open access rights in England and Wales. The use of privately owned land by the military is not an entitlement, and continued use for training is dependent on maintaining good relations with both landowners and local communities. Perhaps they'd like to explain why they were hovering their Chinooks over people's homes. Those wishing to carry out training over private land are not allowed to do so without the approval of the Defence Training Estates and written agreement from the owners and occupiers. Disruptive activities involving helicopters or the deployment of large groups of personnel and vehicles by day or night require a greater degree of planning and notification. A greater degree of planning. Regulation Section 37, subsection D. Units must pay particular attention to the prevention of noise, especially during silent hours. Really? Excuse me. Similarly, exercises are not to be planned in areas where disturbance would be caused to local inhabitants in their homes. But the biggest one for me was the MOD's own avoidance policy. And this is so serious, but it involves royal households. And it says, I'll have to move this over because I can't see it. Apologies. There are no uninhabited areas of the UK large enough to meet our essential training needs. In principle, the whole of the UK is available for low flying by military aircraft to provide sufficient training airspace, whilst reducing the potential for disturbance as far as possible. In practice, military low flying is not conducted in certain areas. In particular, our aircraft do not conduct low flying within the controlled airspace surrounding civil airports. Do you remember the Apache at Cardiff? Okay. They're not to conduct low flying. They're also to avoid overflying centres of population with more than 10,000 inhabitants. Llantrisant has over 13,000, and that does not include Bather and Pontyclean and all the other villages around. And in addition, there are restrictions placed on the overflight of specific industrial, medical, there was a big hospital there, and other key establishments. Those key establishments include royal households, and that would include the Royal Mint. The avoidance policy they chose to ignore that night. Now this is important because the very next will be the witness that was in Smilog Woods that night. Public right of way, section 25, subsection H1 of the Training Over Private Land Act. Service personnel on foot are entitled to use these public facilities in the same way as civilians, but must not monopolise the area. If a public right-of-way crosses an area of private land used for training over private land, it must remain open to the public. There is no legal mechanism to close a public right-of-way for an exercise. If you want to sit down and have a picnic and eat your popcorn in the middle of one of their exercises while they're shouting bang bang at each other, you're more than welcome to do so. But that's not what they did to the men in Smilog Woods that night. And I just happen to have, and hopefully you'll be able to read this, his voice has been changed to protect his identity. There are subtitles, and hopefully you'll be able to read it. I may have to shift it so that you can read it while it plays. These men were assaulted, illegally arrested, illegally searched, and driven miles away from Smilog Woods and told not to return.
Can you tell me then what happened that night?
We're just talking away about any bar, and we can sort.
Sorry, I'll start it again.
Can you tell me then what happened that night?
We're just talking away about any bar, and we can sort of hear like a rumbling helicopter.
Yeah.
That faintly, but close, but not close. We heard that, and we just didn't pay any attention to it. But we could hear it, and then all of a
I've got to
sudden,
move that up.
we heard a bang. But the only way I can describe it is it was loud, but it wasn't sort of loud. It was loud to the point, but when we started talking about it, we felt that maybe because of the length of the forest and the trees between it,
Yeah.
from the road, because we assumed it was a crash, we thought the trees had dampened the sound. So anyway, which is within in milliseconds hearing that, the easiest way I can describe it is if you stood on a vibration plate, like them exercise that vibrate, it was like that. The ground went
Right.
for a minimum of 2 seconds, if that. We both spoke like that. I things had crashed like. We assumed like that. But it was round 15-20 minutes or so, I'd assume afterwards. We could still hear like a faint helicopter, but we could still likely hear this helicopter airplane sort of thing.
Mhm.
And we decided we'll leave the camp and put some logs on, because it was a fair walk back down the road. We
Yeah.
have to walk down through the woods, not so much on the trail, off the trail. So as we're getting closer now, we could hear like people's sounds. So we managed now to get to a point where they crashed on the one side of the road,
Yeah.
and then you have to make the lane, and then the other side, it's like a bit of a bank, and like an incline of trees. Well, there, obviously, we were coming down that incline of trees and trying to be quiet and sneak in, and we were maybe 30, 40 feet still up in these trees, where we could see down to the road, and sort of the other side where this incident had been.
Yeah.
And then we decided, gone from thinking it was a crash, or maybe it's, a helicopter, plane crash sort of thing. So we're looking down, and we can see loads of vehicles,
Yeah.
and they're all parked up. They're parked like that all here and there. And I can only describe, if a military sort of suit is, I assume, what it looked like. And people, how can I explain it? I don't know what it's called. They're like all in one suit.
Hazmat.
That's the one. And we've seen 2 or 3 people walking around in where this object was.
Right.
That crashed thing. And we could see an object, but on my honest truth, seeing it there and bits and things all the way, I can't say to you, I seen a UFO. I can't say I seen a plane. What I could see when we were waiting in the woods when we walked out was like a trail, maybe so far behind it, not a long trail from where it was, the object, but there was debris, but I can't specifically remember seeing wings. No, I'm not saying it didn't have a propeller, but it had a trail of certain behind there and it's damaged. And all I can remember seeing from where we was looking down into what they were around was, to me, if you picture, you know, like a glass Coke bottle, half of a glass Coke bottle without the top end, that sort of little dip shape and then back to a bulge at the bottom. I can pretty much remember that sort of shape, but we could possibly say as well, because it looked like it mounted, not so much mounted, but dug in the ground.
Yeah, well, for the number of trees that it hit before it actually hit the ground.
Well, there was massive amounts of trees. Gone from there then, where we was, we decided, we'll walk onto the road. We'll be fine. Literally, we've been stepping on the road and walking not even 5 yards. People come up to us and grabbed us. And when I mean grabbed us, like grabbed us.
Yeah.
And they took us behind the truck so we couldn't see anything. And they asked, what are we doing here? What we seen? And we just said, we're camping up there, we heard something, badly that. And they were like, what devices we're going to do? They check our point, they took our phone. And all of a sudden, one of them walks off from us and gets in a truck, a pickup truck, sort of vehicle.
Yeah.
And he pulls along, and then they sit us in there, and they don't even, I can't even describe it, it was like an awkward silence.
Yeah.
All the way back down then to past that hotel, down to by L'Oreal, and then they drove us up to the bus stop. Do you know where that is in Talbot Green?
I do, yeah.
And then when we pulled up by the bus station,
Yeah.
I can only describe it again, we sat there for like a minute before they even let us out. But there was no words, they didn't say anything. We were just sat there, and one of them was doing something, and the other one was looking at him and pointing at something towards the driver. And then they opened the door, one of them opened the door and let us out. And they returned our phones. And then, obviously, we didn't check our phones first of all, but we had passcodes on them.
Yeah.
But, obviously, as soon as we got out and they gone, we were like, what the heck is that? Oh, what the hell? And he said, on my phone, he said, I had an app running in the background, like when you close them.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And, my phone does that. And when we turned them on and we looked, there was, no apps in the background. Had been closed.
Yeah.
So
they went through your devices to make sure you didn't have any recordings or photographs.
Yeah, but they must have gone through our passcodes like nothing.
Says it all, doesn't it? They assaulted these boys. They illegally detained them. They kidnapped them by forcing them out of that area in a vehicle, where they used intimidation tactics by remaining silent for an entire minute. Imagine that. You sat in a truck with army personnel. You've just been assaulted and driven miles away, and nobody says a word to you. You had to sit there for an entire minute in absolute silence. Sickened by this, I decided it was time to ask the Ministry of Defence some rather awkward questions. Because you know me, I don't like to mince my words. And their Freedom of Information reference number is at the top there for anybody that would like it. And I will add, they've actually said and marked this Freedom of Information as refused It is not refused. Scroll down and check the PDF. The answers are there. They've done it to try and cover it up. And I asked, what person, organisation or public body did you receive written permission from to conduct this exercise over private land? The MOD does not hold the information you request. What information was given to the local community or local government for such a loud and disturbing exercise over a congested area? The Ministry of Defence does not hold the information you request. Were there any restrictions placed upon you by the landowner, organisation or public body prior to this exercise? The MOD does not hold the information you request. What written permission did you have to land your helicopters in silent hours in a congested area? And the Ministry of Defence does not hold the information you request. And can you supply a copy of the detailed recce, including a photocopy of the mapping routes? And would you believe the Ministry of Defence do not have a single piece of paperwork for a multi-billion-pound operation? Not one. Well, one of the sticking points that I had with, shall I say, my trolls and debunkers was a NOTAM that was posted. This NOTAM was inserted last minute. It was never planned, and I will prove it. This is on the Ministry of Defence's own website. This is a list of all the exercises for those dates, or for that time, I should say. And every exercise has a commencement date, because they're planned. For example, right at the top, we've got week commencing 21st of March. And so on the 10th of March, the MOD sponsored an air exercise, and it commenced on the 14th of March. On the 4th of March, they had one commence on the 7th of March. Further down the page, one on the 4th of February to commence on the 8th of February. But the one on the 25th of February has no commencement date because it was added last minute. Now, there was a NOTAM, and this is the NOTAM, and anybody who's military in the chat will know how these things operate. And the red circle in the middle here is the NOTAM area. All air traffic is supposed to come down across the estuary here and into the NOTAM area, which is the yellow area that you see circled on the map on the right. The yellow pins in the map are from hundreds of people that called the police that night because of the loud helicopter and aircraft noise, where helicopters were hovering so low over their homes. One guy said it nearly took the chimney off the roof of his house. The red circle is where they went, continuously pushing those green objects west and all the way out to sea. They are not allowed to fly within 3 nautical miles of a NOTAM's boundary. They are not, there are minimum heights and maximum heights, so they operate within this bubble. But I wanted to prove it. And so I wrote to the, let me add this first, because this is about the 2 aircraft that, on the subject of NOTAMs, that were here in the preceding days before the event happened. And this is one of the reasons why this investigation has taken so long. I sent a request off on the 28th of September 2018, and after nearly 2 years and 6 months, I have not seen or been notified of any reply, which you are lawfully obliged to do after 20 to 40 days. And the reference numbers are here if you want to check this out. Military planes were seen circling on the 23rd and 24th of February 2016 in the Colwinston and Pentyrch areas. Why was no NOTAM issued for these dates? And the MOD said that they held no information in the scope of our request. Yeah, again, I've got to slide this up, I'm sorry. So we asked again on freedom of information. I've got to move these out of the way because I don't know why the slides have dropped. Could you please tell me why your plane ZZ418 Hawker Beechcraft was spotted by witnesses flying in circles and figure 8 formations in Pentyrch, South Wales from the 22nd of February 2016 to the 26th of February 2016, This plane was also identified on public internet flight radar websites, and that information was withheld under Section 26. No NOTAM has ever been issued for those aircraft. No exercise has ever been listed for them either. But getting back to the main NOTAM that they slipped in that night, we wrote to National Air Traffic Services. They're in charge of the airspace. Surely they would know something. I've got to get this up because out of my files, because the print's quite small, I don't have the best eyesight in the world, and I need to read this. I'm making a request for information on a NOTAM which was listed for Exercise Chameleon, allegedly, conducted on the 25th and 26th of February 2016, and the area in which this took place was South Wales area of the UK. Could you please provide me with the following? What time did or was this application made for the NOTAM to be placed in this area for this particular exercise? Could you please provide a list of what aircraft and vehicles were listed to be part of this NOTAM issued for Exercise Chameleon, allegedly, on said date? What time did the official NOTAM get issued for this area? And could you please provide a map for the NOTAM outlining the borders and boundaries for said exercise? And the case number is on the right. Thank you for your recent inquiry requesting information about this historic NOTAM from the 25th and 26th of February 2016. I have been in touch with our NOTAM team, and unfortunately, they have been unable to find any information relating to this specific NOTAM. How strange. So we wrote to the Ministry of Defence. I mean, clearly, they should know something. They were the people that issued this NOTAM. Oh, that was the Civil Aviation Authority. There it is. Strategic Command. Same questions. A search for the information has been completed within the Ministry of Defence, and I can confirm that no information in this scope is found. However, under Section 16, Advice and Assistance, I can advise that the Ministry of Defence submits NOTAMs for certain military exercises to the Civil Aviation Authority at least 5 days prior to a military exercise. Well, that's where I went wrong. So we contacted the Civil Aviation Authority, because I ain't messing about here. And we asked them the same questions for the same dates. And yet again, they state, your request has been considered in line with the provisions for the Freedom of Information Act 2000. Following a review of held information, it has been determined that the CAA holds no information in the scope of your original request. The NOTAM was never planned. Now, we do have additional primary witnesses, and I just want to introduce you to this man, Mr. Richard Woodward, who is a witness to the pyramid. I am not the only witness, and has gone public, and I'd like to play this for you.
Like I say, I think it was a clear evening. It was either a Thursday or a Friday evening, and I drove down to Pentyrch, parked opposite the Indian restaurant, and I just happened to look up, and first of all I saw like a constant red orange light, which I thought was a Chinook helicopter, because even though it was, the night was Bible black, if you like, I was thinking that with the Chinook helicopters, because they're such large aircraft, I was thinking that there was a red orange light at the front and a red orange light at the back where the propellers oscillate, you know?
Yeah.
But it was absolutely dead. No sound whatsoever. And then, slowly, majestically, if you like, this craft just flew over. And I remember the triangular formation, and in each corner of that triangle was the red, orangey, glowing light. By looking at this light continually, I didn't have to close my eyes or whatever. And some people say to me, oh, well, you know, if you've seen that, why didn't you get your phone up? You're sort of starstruck, if you like. because you can't believe what you're saying. And I didn't want to get my phone out because you're there and you're going to mess about and you're going to try and put it on video. I just wanted to take in with my own eyes what was going on. But I'm thinking back to myself now and how long it took the backlight of the triangle, if you like, to come into focus. But this, it was just so surreal. And like I say, it was so quiet. And it just crossed the sky with absolutely no sound whatsoever. It was majestic. And I knew it wasn't of this world. So there's no sound. It doesn't seem like there's anything pushing this thing for no proportion. And it's not encountering any turbulence or any energy coming towards it. This will probably sound absurd, but to me, watching it, I wasn't frightened, but it seemed that there was some kind of engagement, there was some kind of oneness with this aircraft, UFO, whatever you want to call it. I didn't feel frightened. You'd think I'd rush back and tell my wife I didn't. Because I couldn't, it was so much to absorb. It was, again, because my brain was working overtime, because we all like to, you know, start something, a project or whatever. There's a start, there's a middle and a finish. But I knew that I'd probably never be able to work out or understand what it was. But it's an amazing thing, you know. I suppose I would say I am blessed to see it, because what happens to any other people who've seen these things, which it just opens your mind up totally. I mean, you walk around like with blinkers on, like a racing horse, you know. And it seems when you see something like this, which you can't understand, they get taken off, and you want to learn more about it. You know, I'm now hoping that we can grow up a little bit. Other people who scorn or laugh or make fun of the subject matter will grow up a little bit and realise that there is something going on.
It was Mr. Richard Woodward who came forward to give us an interview about what he saw on that night. Now, we do have other primary witness testimony. I'm not going to read them all, but I'll read a couple so you get the idea. This is a witness that's in Pentyrch. On Friday the 26th of February 2016, I was woken up in the middle of the night by loud aircraft noise and very bright lights. I looked out of my bedroom window towards the fields behind the primary school in Tinnycoid Woods. I was concerned as the lights were bright and the noise so loud I thought an aircraft was crashing in the fields due to the low height. I continued to watch from the window at the bright lights combination of very bright white lights and red lights, trying to work out what was happening, when literally the lights went and the aircraft went. I couldn't decide if they went to ground or flew off. It happened quickly where I was, and looked as if one went to ground. I couldn't make out the amount of aircraft as the lights were blinding, but there were a few by the different engine noises. I stayed still, watching, waiting for signs of a crash to decide whether to go out and help. But I could not see any smoke or signs of a crash. It was bizarre, as we had very little sleep in our house, but our children didn't wake to this and slept all night. It is the only night since 2007 I have not had a child awake, and this is something that still stands out as odd to us to this day, as it's still the only night our children didn't wake. We've also got the Colwinston public statements, and I'll have to bring this up on file because if I zoom in on it, you'll lose it. A family living in Colwinston, a village in a rural setting situated southeast of Bridgend, was awoken just after 2 a.m. by their house vibrating. The house felt like it was shaking, and the noise, never heard it in my life, a very strange noise, almost felt like it was a static feeling. The dog was barking and was described by witnesses as bonkers behaviour, which was not characteristic. Through the window, the witnesses saw a large object flying over the house, roughly west to east, just over the rooftop. The object displayed a row of orange and red lights, and its underneath surface had a light green hue. A green light orb was seen leaving the main group of lights and descended into the fields in an area southeast of Colwinston. During this time, witnesses managed to take several photographs on a mobile phone. That we do have. About 6 to 7 minutes later, several aircraft were heard flying overhead, bright lights were seen, and what were thought to be Apache helicopters were heard flying around, but which were dark and did not display any navigation lights at 2:33 a.m. These were heard circling the area where the green light had gone down for 5 to 6 minutes. These aircraft then headed off northeast, roughly in the direction of Pentyrch and Pentyrch, and then all went quiet, and the witnesses went back to bed. Following the incident, the official explanation that this had been a military exercise persuaded the witnesses that this had been the case. But recently, on learning of the incident at Pentyrch, the witnesses checked the dates and times of the photos and realised the incident that they'd experienced was on the same night and therefore must be linked in some way. That green object tried to hide. And finally, from the Secretariat Air Command, dated 1st of March 2023, 7 years after we started this investigation. Thank you for your email on the 3rd of February 2023 requesting the following information. I wish to make a Freedom of Information request, please. Could you please confirm if any information is held within the Ministry of Defence, the Defence Infrastructure Organisation, or any office that would hold information pertaining to any day or night military exercises or day or night low-flying exercises for the area of South Wales for the time of February of 2016. I am treating your correspondence as a request for information under the Freedom of Information Act 2000. A search for the information has now been completed within the Ministry of Defence, and I can confirm that no information in the scope of your request is held. There were no programmed defence air exercises in South Wales in February of 2016. So why were they here? And how did I know that it was not an exercise on the morning of the 26th of February 2016? And finally, I have to say this because this is the witness giving me permission to publish these photographs. These are the photographs that the Colwinston witness took. These objects, that there's a red barrel over here on the far left-hand side, are some of the barrel-shaped objects that came out of the pyramid that night, that the military pursued and shot at least 2 of those barrel-shaped objects down, and the rest they pursued west and all the way out to sea. The metadata is there. 26th of February 2016 at 2:33 in the morning. And I have to say to you, you're my judge and jury. I didn't make this up. This was real. And the Pentyrch incident, above and beyond any reasonable doubt, was real. And I ask you, you're my judge and jury, are the authorities guilty or not guilty of a conspiracy to cover up the truth?